Hello and welcome to a very special evening of music and conversation in celebration of Culture Night 2020, made possible by support from Clare Arts Office and the Arts Council of Ireland. I'm Carl Corcoran and I have the honour of acting as moderator of this event, an event that epitomises an international cultural connection, and that international connection is further exemplified tonight by the fact that our performers are oceans apart. Utsav Lal is in New York, Tommy Hayes and Matthew Noone are in County Clare, and I'm in Dublin City. Cross-cultural pathways is the confluence between Irish and Indian music. What is the connection between Irish and Indian music? Our participants will discuss this and give examples of the marriage of these two traditions, with some musical performances peppered throughout our presentation. Gentlemen, you are very welcome to our room.
Thank you.
Thanks, let me start by giving a little biographical background to each of our participants. Utsav Lal is an award-winning pianist, improviser, educator, and composer. He's recognized as a musician extraordinaire who has set a precedent in the world of music with his renditions of ragas on the piano. He's a young Steinway artist, joining the impressive list of pianists recognized by the famous piano manufacturer, such as Diana Krall, Billy Joel, legends like Cole Porter, Sergei Rachmaninoff, Arthur Rubinstein, and many more. An impressive music career behind him already at an early age. Utsav is known for as the raga pianist for his innovative handling of the Indian classical music genre. He's gained international recognition for his groundbreaking work with performances across the world and for his contributions to developing a confluence of the rich musical traditions of India and Ireland, with his collaborations with such musicians as Martin Hayes and Dennis Cahill, fiddler Winford Horan of the supergroup Solace, and Irish-tinged jazz playing of Sam Comerford. Tonight we can add two more names to that list of collaborators after tonight's performance. Tommy Hayes has been at the forefront of traditional Irish music for over 30 years in a career that has exemplified diversity. He has performed and recorded with most of the great names in traditional music and beyond. Tommy has been a member of a number of groundbreaking bands during his career. He was a founding member of Stockton's Wing from the band's inception in 1977 to 1983, recording 4 seminal albums, and more recently was on stage for reunion tour performances of the band. Moving to the States in the 80s, he performed with Tuck Fair, along with Brian Dunning and Micheál O'Donnell. The group toured for 5 years and recorded 1 album on Windham Hill Records. And returning to Ireland in '89, Tommy was a member of a number of bands, including Alton and the Liam O'Flynn and the Piper's Call Band. Achieving a Master's in Music Therapy from the Irish World Academy at UL some years back, he divides his time and efforts in practicing music therapy and as well as managing an active music performance profile. Matthew Noone is an Australian-Irish ex-indie rocker, improviser, composer and performer of the 25-string lute called the sarod. After beginning a musical career as a guitarist and drummer in Australia, in the mid-90s, Matthew fell in love with the sarod during a trip to India in 2003. He studied North Indian classical music for over a decade and has performed Indian classical music across the globe. He composes in a diverse range of disciplines ranging from Irish traditional music, free improvisation and contemporary electroacoustic music. Along with the trio colleagues tonight, Matthew has performed also with Martin Hayes and Dennis Cahill, Sean McErlane, Steve Cooney, and of course, as previously mentioned, Tommy Hayes. Collectively known as AnTara, Tommy and Matthew explore the spaces in between the traditions of Irish and Indian classical music. Released on the Raylock record label, they have released 2 albums. I think I've said everything that there is to know about you, gentlemen. It hardly leaves anything for you to say, but I'm going to start the conversation by opening it to the floor and asking each of you to give us a little background information on how you came to Irish music. Tommy, it's obvious for you how you came to Irish music, but we'll start with Utsav and your journey.
I mean, so my family moved to Ireland when I was 12 or 13. I basically came here for third year and had to do the leaving cert or the junior cert. And I decided to go and do the music exam in there. And the thing that was the most unfamiliar was Irish music. And there was a flute player called Dave Sheridan who was teaching at the school at the time, who kind of introduced me to what a reel is, what a jig is, gave me a few CDs, and then kind of taught me a few tunes. And then another teacher that I had in the school called Aaron Copeland gave me Martin and Dennis's The Lonesome Touch album. He kind of introduced me to a lot of different styles of music, but that was the one Irish music record that he gave me, and I was immediately just like obsessed with that. And I ended up staying in Ireland for another 3 or 4 years, learning more musicians. I never really played in sessions in Ireland or was part of a community of traditional musicians. It was always just meeting someone or going to a show and going, can you see how to do that? Or how does this thing work? And then I ended up doing a jazz degree in Scotland. And after about 2 years of really soaking myself in jazz, kind of started getting more interested in the traditional music sessions because they just seemed more fun and less vibey and like same amount of notes, but I guess less, I don't know. Like everyone wasn't trying to show off every single thing that they'd learned in class that week at the session. And you'd have like these amazing musicians, the best fiddle players around, and then people over from Ireland coming in, and then people over from Scandinavian countries coming in and playing tunes along with people who are just like starting. And I loved that aspect of it. It like immediately made me like relate music to community. And the way a lot of jazz works is it can be in a vacuum, particularly if it's in a university kind of way. Doesn't have to be, but that kind of like just sparked my love. And since then it's been like just listening to so many records and trying to play with as many people as I can, and playing in sessions in Boston and Glasgow. And yeah, it turned from like, this is a nice thing to like do while I'm staying here, to like, this is something that I seriously want to be involved in for the rest of my life. And I want to like dig as much into it as I can.
What's your journey, Matthew?
With Irish music? My father's Irish, and he was an immigrant to Australia. I was born and grew up in Australia. But we used to come back a lot to Ireland when I was a kid, and I was always very connected to Ireland. But I kind of actually hated Irish music because, as you said in your very glowing bio about me, I was a rock guitarist. You know, I was into angry young man music and screaming and jumping around, and Irish music was just twee to me. You know, I used to work in the Irish bars in the Irish Association in Brisbane, and it was, you know, shamrocks and leprechauns and I was sort of really, it just repulsed me, the whole scene actually, and the music, I just never really got into it. And then I guess the first time I ever really got a sense of liking the music was when I came to Ireland, and I bought a Stockton's Wing cassette actually. Believe it or not. I think it was Take a Chance. Is that the second album?
Yeah.
Yeah. I bought it from this guy. There was this guy who used to be on the bridge, the O'Connell Street Bridge. And he's famous for, he used to sell cassettes in the 90s.
Yeah.
Anyway, I bought a bunch of cassettes, Nirvana and Stockton's Wing were my 2 cassettes. And I was 19, I was driving around Ireland. My uncle gave me his car for a month. And yeah, that was my soundtrack for my first solo journey around, the Stockton's Wing and Nirvana. And I think it was something about that which sort of put a little light bulb, and was like, okay, there's, you know, particularly what I liked about Stockton Swing, and then when I got into other bands like the Bohy Band and even Planksty, there was a punk sort of an energy, you know, that I hadn't heard before in the music. And then yeah, that was my first sort of initial exposure. And then obviously moving to Clare, I became aware of Martin Hayes's music, and particularly the Live in Seattle album was the album that really woke me up and got me into actually wanting to play the music then. And the thing about the Live in Seattle, because when I came, I'd settled in Ireland by that time, and I was playing Indian music. And even after I'd settled in Ireland as an adult, I still wasn't particularly interested in playing it. I was very much Indian music guy. But then when I heard Live in Seattle, I was like, oh, okay. So it doesn't just have to be tunes. You can string them together. You know, how Martin and Dennis have these long sets, you know, these suites, and when I heard it, I was like, oh, that's like a raga, you know, they're putting it together like Alab, Jor, Jala, you know, and then of course when I spoke with Martin, that's exactly what he was inspired by, was Indian music when he was putting those sets together. So that was the big door opener for me then.
But at this time, you already had an immersion in Indian music.
Yeah, I was Indian music guy. I came to Ireland. My teacher actually had this dream. It was like a vision dream one night, that I was going to be, you know, spread our Indian music all over Ireland. And he was like, you have to do this, you know. I should mention my teacher. That's one thing he didn't mention in my bio. My teacher, Shagata Roy Chowdhury from Calcutta. He you know, he sort of gave me his blessing to start performing, and he was like, and to start teaching Indian music. And he thought, you know, the west of Ireland was going to be the new mecca for Indian music. So yeah, then I discovered Irish music, and that sort of took a slight detour.
What was that like a spiritual premonition that your teacher had? Yeah,
well, we were sleeping in the same room. I used to go on tour with him, and I'd sleep on the floor next to him, you know. And they do that in Aboriginal cultures. Actually, they say if you share a room, with someone, and then you share your dreams, actually, particularly with an elder. So it was interesting that happened. So yeah, he woke up in the morning, and no, that's what it was actually. I'd had a dream, and I had this dream. In the dream, it's confusing because it was a dream. In the dream, he was presenting me with this butterfly, like an orange and black butterfly. I could just see his hands doing this, you know? I told him about the dream as soon as I woke up. I'm like, whoa, man, I had this weird dream. And he was like, oh, that's a premonition. That means you have to, this is me giving you Indian music, and you have to, you know, spread it.
So tell me, I mean, obviously your background is in the tradition.
Oh yeah, very much so. Yeah, and not so much. No, there was no. My uncle played the accordion for his wife, who was a dance teacher. But that would have been the only bit of traditional music in my household, and there was hardly any traditional music where I grew up, any at all. I'd have been much more into the Beatles at that stage. It's a bit like Christy Moore says, I had to leave the country before I got interested in Irish music. I was in London, and I had a cousin who was married to a fella called Roger Nicholson, who was a Appalachian dulcimer player, who was very into folk music and Irish music, and he introduced me to Irish music, and that's where I got the bug, really, to be honest about it. So when I came back after that trip, that became my life for however long I've been around.
And had you played Irish music?
Not really. I started quite late. I started in my early 20s. I had played a bit. I played a bit of percussion, played the spoons mostly, but kind of got seriously into it in my early 20s. Okay. And I suppose I started when I was 21. Within 2 years, I was playing full time. I was in Stockton Swing. So, and I'd won a couple of All-Irelands previous to that. So that was kind of where it started. Yeah, but I've always been interested in other musics. I'm mad into North African music. I really love that whole Arabic vibe. And through playing with this fella here, I've kind of got much more interested in Indian music as well.
Okay, maybe we should take a break for some music. We have a few musical selections lined up for the evening, and the first of them is a duo performance between Matthew and Tommy called The Golden Stud. You want to tell us a little bit about this, gentlemen, before we play?
The first tune is one of Padarareda's beautiful tunes. I think it's called Fiara. I'm 90% sure that it's Fiara, which means February in Irish, right?
February, yep.
Yeah. So it's one of Pada's beautiful tunes. And yeah, then the second tune is The Golden Stud, which is actually a Stockton Swing tune, composed by Stockton Swing in a tent. Tommy,
in a tent initially, yeah. The whole gang of us, really, yeah.
In a tent?
In a tent, yeah. Or, you know, sitting around the campfire type of thing. We were on tour, and there was a couple of nights off, and there was nowhere to stay, so we took the van and the tent and found ourselves a campsite and sitting around playing tunes, and that's what came out of it.
Tommy and Matthew together and a track called Golden Stud. Utsav, your background is in Indian classical music. Can you explain to us what is Indian classical music?
Indian classical music is basically the traditional classical music form of India, as the name suggests. But it's quite a vast kind of genre of music. There's a lot of other forms that come within it, and different ways of presenting, different instruments, different styles. But some of the things that are common between everything is that it's improvised according to highly specific rules, which have, like, you have specified number of notes that you can use, pitches that you can use, certain ways to ascend, certain ways to descend, but also quite a lot of rules between, like, every single note has like characters and personalities. So it's like when you learn a piece of Indian music, or when you learn a rag, which is kind of the main concept, you not only learn that you have like a first, a flat second, major third things, but you learn that the flat second is really shy and likes hiding behind the major third. Or you learn that you don't go to the flat seventh because you don't go from the fifth to the flat seventh, because you need to go down to the fourth and then go to the flat seven, because the flat seven doesn't like that. And then there's all of these rules, and all of the rules have yes, but in this context you can kind of thing linked to it. So the only way to really learn a lot of this stuff is you just sit very patiently and have like these imitation sessions with your teacher, where my lessons are like 2 hours of me going there with a little keyboard. I study with a singer, Vasuddin Dagarji, who sings like the most patient, regarded as the most serious and old-fashioned form of Indian classical music, where you don't have sitars or tablas, you just have voice and veena, which is like big bassy sitar with a lot of bending capabilities. And we'll sit over there in silence for a while, and then he'll sing one note, and then I'll play it back, and then he'll sing some more phrases. And this keeps going on for 2 hours. If I play anything wrong, he'll just keep repeating it until I get it right, and then move on. And if I ask a question, he might answer it in a few minutes. He might answer it like, there's one question I asked him that he answered like a year and a half later. And I just thought he didn't hear me or thought I was stupid for asking it. And he's like, you asked me this once, and now I can tell you what the answer is. So there's just so much patience involved in every aspect of this music, and very little talking about everything and more experiencing everything and slowly just realizing where the boundaries are and what they are.
Is piano typical in the delivery of Indian music?
No, the piano is probably one of like the least practical instruments to play Indian classical music, because all of the stuff that's really special and amazing about Indian music is physically impossible to do on the piano, which is something that I kind of knew when I started out, but really understand the scope of how much of a bad idea this is until I was in my like mid to late teens. And then there's always like this thing of, do I keep going with it? I can't get all the microtones, I can't get the bends, and that kind of turned more into, but look at all of these I figured out how to do on the piano that I wouldn't have figured out if I was just doing classical music or something else. Like, and that kind of starting in me of, I just want to push the piano towards places that Indian music will force me to take it. Like, I love trying to play slide guitar things on the piano, like Blind Willie Johnson and stuff like that. I love listening to Duck Was the Night, I love listening to Joe Heaney really intently and trying to get that stuff in there.
Interesting that I read somewhere where you said that you'd expressed delight in the rules and boundaries of ragas, and yet you state that you like the improvisational nature. And you have explained perfectly. My question was going to be, how do you reconcile the two statements? And obviously, you have over years and years and years of immersion in it. Can the same be said about Irish music?
Well, it's like, as Utsav was talking earlier about being in a section with a piano and people telling him what he could or he couldn't do. I get a fair bit of that. Being a percussionist in Irish music, which is, when I started playing, there was 4 professional percussionists in Irish music, and one of them was Scottish. So when you think of it in those terms, it's been a bit of an uphill battle, but it obviously has succeeded because there's a hell of a lot more of them there now. But at the same time, there is an expectation, especially in sessions, that you follow the rules. Yeah.
Would someone like Micheál O'Sullivan been a little bit of a renegade in his approach to Irish music on piano?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And he was renegade in his approach to everything.
Good point.
I think the thing, like when Utsav was talking there about the rules of ragas and these wonderful metaphors that teachers often give, like my teacher talks about the notes being houses actually that you can visit, and it's like one's like your in-laws' house, and one is like your own family's house, and all these things. But I think that there's some parallels with Irish music. I think it's because they're both oral traditions. So when you have a tradition that's not primarily written down, then you have to make up some rules, and those rules are flexible, and they're usually verbally expressed, and they're sort of subtle because it's not a notated music. And Irish music has that too. So you can't learn the tune. You can't learn the tune just by reading it from a book. You have to actually experience it, like Utsav was saying, because it's an oral tradition. It has to be something that's experienced, heard, and felt.
Yeah, and that's the thing that makes it like a living tradition as well, because the tunes are changing. Like the pieces of Indian music, the rags are changing, and even in Irish traditional tunes, like there was this super kind of, I don't know if this is my memory just romanticizing it, but at the Masters of Traditional Festival in Bantry, I was listening to Martin and Dermot Byrne, is it? Yeah. They were playing a tune backstage, and I can't even remember what tune it was, but I remember like there was one note difference in the way that Dermot was playing it. And after 2 rounds of the thing, Martin changed his to play it that way. And I was thinking about, is that how this, now Martin's going to play it, that else will hear it, and something will change in how Martin's playing it, and it'll keep getting passed around and evolving and shifting with the times. Indian music compositions always do. It's not like this piece of music. Each musician's kind of putting themselves right back into every single composition and form and style.
Can we take a break for another piece of music? And this time we'll feature Utsav with a selection that includes the Clare Reel. You want to tell us a little bit about this, Utsav?
It's basically an improvisation around Rag Bhairavi, which is one of kind of the seminal rugs in Indian classical music. But I'm super interested I love playing Irish tunes with less chords than most people do, and changing like the tonal center of where it is, and kind of trying to get as many different the tune from it, fragmenting it and breaking it up along the way. So I guess this was more like I learned the tune, I know Rag Bhairavi, and then it's like, let's set aside rules and see how do these things actually talk with each other.
Very, very beautiful. Utsav, you mentioned earlier that the piano is not the preferred vehicle for ragas, but your association with one Jeffrey Smith has made that pathway a little easier, would you think? Can you tell us a little bit about that and about Jeffrey?
Yeah, so Jeffrey Smith is an inventor and musician in Brighton, UK, who basically he spent years and years designing and inventing a piano that can bend notes. And it's in a fully acoustic piano, and it has sliders on top of each note, and you can bend the pitch up or down a semitone. And I went over, when I first heard about it, I went and checked the fluid piano, as he called it, out in, it was in a storage building at that point of time, and played it for half an hour and kept dreaming about getting my hands on it again. And as with these things, it took like 4 years to actually schedule the time, and I managed to record an album in 2015 that I think came out a year later. And it's an incredible musician, and Jeff is also so open to other people coming and playing it. Any pianist who feels like have a bit more pitch flexibility when they're playing, they can go and check it out. But I would say that the fluid piano turned out, I don't feel like a solution to my problems, because I like the problems that I have with playing Indian classical music on the piano. It's like nice to know that the job will never be done. You can just keep going, pushing it further and further away. And the fluid piano is its own instrument that's incredibly beautiful to play, amazingly made. I would love to get my hands on it as often as I can. If I ever have enough money to buy one or get one custom made for me, I would love to have that. But there's a certain charm in like just forcing a piano in whatever way you can to like try and put across the idea to the audience that this is being bent. These notes are being bent, it's being sustained for way longer. Tuning the pianos differently and seeing these like messes of frequencies interact with each other. Like it's
does that make the expression or the performance of the music much more authentic, in that you can get those bending notes and the glissandos?
The fluid piano does, absolutely. The fluid piano,
you do it very well in a natural form of playing.
Yeah, but it's always going to be a disguised version. Like I always see like what I'm trying to do is like I'm trying to create the illusion of hearing in their pure form through whatever ways that I can do to express myself. But the instrument is what it is. And if I learn as much as I can about the music, sing it in my head, know every single thing, and develop my own kind of facility on the piano to communicate that should be the same. It's still smoke and mirrors. This instrument isn't built for bending notes. It's not built for scooping into notes or having like vibrato. So like I'm super conscious of that even more. Like every day I get more conscious of that, and also more committed to like, I have to see how far I'll go. And the further you go, the more you find there is to do and other things that you missed out about.
I'm just remembering Utsav and Matthew and myself did a gig. How long ago was it, Utsav? 4 or 5 years ago. We did a house.
Yeah.
We did a house concert in AnTara, and we arrived at the house, and the lady of the house was apologizing for the piano that she had. Do you remember that, Utsav?
Yeah.
And you said, this is about 100 times better than most pianos I would ever get my hands on in India.
Yeah.
I remember that quite well, actually. Yeah. So
it was a beautiful piano.
It was, and I suppose my question on that is, I would assume then that because you're in India, you're used to playing on really substandard instruments, that you have an ability to kind of maneuver your way around that, and it's probably stood you in good stead, actually doing that on a decent instrument.
Yeah, but every piano is different. They have like personalities. Like I did a recording a couple of days back for Steinway Hall over here for their player piano, system, and I was playing this like the best piano, the best Steinway that they have in New York, and recording things. And then I came home to this piano over here, which I bought for 50 off a piano mover who was going to chuck it. And the bridge is broken. The pedals had to be like, we had to drill new holes, put the pedals back, only work. The frame is hanging off the side and resting on the action. Take it out. A bunch of the hammers are bandaged together with those things that you wrap garlic in. It's a mess. Like, you can't get it in tune for longer than like a couple of days. But it's like, I love playing this. Like, I went and played on this time and I was like, wow, this is incredible. And then I came home and I was like, this is kind of more fun.
What's the general feeling in the group to the introduction of such innovative embellishments like what Utsav was speaking in terms of the fluid piano is a Jeffrey Smith, and Matthew, your own experience with Music Network and the sarod, that was a particular embellishment of the instrument?
Yeah, I've actually had two new sarods made, custom made ones. One was for playing Irish music, which my dad insists on calling the Noone sarod. And it never really took off the name, but anyway. And the second one I had was made for playing electroacoustic music. And yeah, I definitely resonate with a lot of what Utsav was talking about, trying to make. Well, I definitely empathize with what he's saying about, trying to make the instrument fit a tradition, because the sarod obviously is not designed for playing Irish traditional music. It's very much designed for playing Indian classical music, and it's really, really good at that. So like yourself, Utsav, I realized, not pretty quickly in that, like I chose a very difficult path trying to play Irish music on this road. So, I realized that I kind of needed a new instrument that wasn't a sarod. So I made some adjustments to the sarod. I shortened the neck and changed the tuning slightly. I mean, sonically, it still works on the same principles. It still looks mostly like a sarod, but it's much smaller. And so ergonomically, it was easier to play tunes, because the biggest thing about the sarod is that it has a really long neck. So, to play a scale, you're going up this, whereas you're playing on a fiddle, you're just jumping across strings all the time, so you can't play at speed. So that was a big thing. But I think for me, having an instrument that wasn't a traditional sarod was really useful for me, just in the mental capacity, because it sort of freed me up. It's like, well, I don't have to abide by the rules of Indian music. Obviously, when I play the sarod, it's going to be very influenced by my training in Indian classical music. But having a different instrument sort of freed me up in that regard, mentally as well as, physically.
And in terms of your instrument fitting into this hybrid of Indian and Irish music?
Oh, God. Well, I only hit things, Carol, so it's not that big a deal. Actually, it's very interesting.
Sometimes you bend them.
I do a bit. I do. So, what was very interesting to me was just about over a year ago, myself and Matthew went to India. I'd never been to India before, and I'm not too sure if I ever want to go back, but that's a different story. And we played, lots of different places, and we played in temples and all up and down the south of India, and it was amazing. I loved it. But one of the things that happened was on the very last day we were there. What's your friend's name? The Veena player?
Subramaniam.
Yeah. Subramaniam had organized me to meet with a kanjira player, which is a South Indian percussion instrument. And it was really interesting because the guy was amazing. He was an amazing player, but he was treating it as a lesson. And he wasn't treating it as two who sitting down playing together. It was very interesting. And what I discovered about it as well was the fact that a lot of the percussionists in Indian music don't know the music that well, because they're learning patterns. Whereas being immersed in traditional music, I know hundreds of tunes. They might be in my head, but I know them, you know. And I found that really, really interesting in terms of where I come from in terms of feeling music, and I suppose where my heart is in terms of Irish music. And I mean, I'm not knocking the guys, and I've played with some extraordinary players over there. But it's funny the way the tradition is set up, where it's quite rigid in some ways, and I mean, it's quite rigid here too, but you can get around it, you know. So yeah, and I mean, I suppose for me, I mean, technically and stylistically, these guys were way above my level of expertise. I mean, completely in a different stratosphere. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was very. I found it really interesting. It's something I've thought about quite a lot since. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, if you don't know the music, then all the craft in the world is kind of just the, the what are you going to do with that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
See, in Ireland, the percussionist gets the big money.
Oh yeah, sure.
Tommy's the star of the show, don't you know? I'm supporting Tommy, actually.
Yeah, right.
You should see my cut of the
Matthew, we'll have to talk, you and I.
yeah, we'll talk later.
Talking about innovations, our next musical interlude is from Utsav again. And I notice in your description of this selection, you referred to your playing of the old bush, the Irish element to this medley, that you enjoy playing it differently each time. Is that a frequent component of all your interpretations?
Yeah, I would say so. You're trying to create something new, and this is actually a piece of advice that I hear like from so many different people that I respect across different traditions, like whether it's classical music or Indian music or Irish music. Like Martin has said this to me. My teachers in Indian music have said it to me. Like people that studied free improvisation have said it to me. It's like the most important thing before you play is like try to hone into what is needed at that present time for you to like do your thing. Yeah.
There's another piece that you're going to open this set with. It's an Indian piece.
Yeah, it's a rag that's very special to the family that I study with, the Dagar Gharana. And it's actually a Carnatic rag, and the Dagars are the only ones in the North Indian style who sing or play this rag, and it's called Kamboji. And what I did was just do a little bit of like an alap in Kamboji, which is introduce people to the key phrases in Kamboji, kind of systematically go between the things and then kind of launch into the old bush and come back into Kamboji to finish it.
Love it. Let's give a listen. Cambodia and the Old Bush, with a new way of playing the Old Bush. Right? I suppose improvisation in the fullest sense, in a way, if that's what you're doing, that you're playing it differently each time. And tonight that was a beautiful and perfect confluence of Irish and Indian music. Isn't that what AnTara is all about, gentlemen?
Yes, kind of.
Well, I don't know. I know it says that in our bio. I don't know if it is anymore, actually. I mean, I know this is all about this. That's the whole topic of our discussion. But I don't think it's as narrow as that anyway. I don't think it's about Indian. To me, anyway. But I mean, it definitely started off as trying to find ways to bring together Irish and Indian music. But I think now it's just really what Tommy and I want to play. And that probably is something that is in between Irish and Indian music, obviously. Like AnTara means the space between, in Arabic, the space between things, But I think when we began, it was very much clearer that like we take a rag, right? We take a rag, and then I'd find a tune that would correlate, and then we put them together that way. But now it's more improvised, I guess. Now when Tommy and I get together, we just play what we feel like playing, and we don't write set lists. And I write a lot of tunes my own, which some of them are sort of Irish forms. Some of them aren't, and some of the pieces we make, we wrote a few pieces in India that were just pieces of music, not Irish or Indian, just something that we like to play. So I guess it's less about finding less cultural and more about internal. I think that's what it's about. It's about finding that something in yourself that feels like is true. Maybe that is what's important in any sort of cross-cultural collaboration is finding out what's true for yourself. And I think that's really what we're about.
And yeah, he's actually right in lots of ways. Most of the time he isn't, but he is tonight. What I find when I play with Matthew is there's a lot of dynamic interplay in what's going on between the two of us, and there's a lot of improvisation, and it kind of happens naturally. Is we clue in really well. I mean, it's I suppose the normal thing when two musicians play together or a bunch of musicians play together is they're really cluing into each other. And I think we allow that space to happen a lot more than when we started off. I was quite a bit more hesitant about the thing anyway when we started off. But yeah, these days it's much more organic, man.
And I think initially I was more hesitant to mess with either the Irish tunes or even with the Indian stuff, you know. But I think really now it's about the space between me and Tommy, more than Irish and Indian music. You know, it's just about the connection we have, and just sharing all the music that we love and experience, and you know, that's really what it's about.
We're going to have another musical interlude, and Matthew and Tommy again to perform a couple of tunes. Tell us a little bit about this selection, gentlemen. I think one is called Buttercup.
Peadar Riada is one of my biggest inspirations for Irish traditional music. He just writes the most exquisite tunes that just he really just reaches back into a place that's, you know, the unconscious, and it's very much in the tradition of Irish traditional music, but it's also something tapping into something deeper as well. So beautiful. And also his father was a big influence on me. Sean Riada's, just the presence of Sean Riada, it can't be underestimated, I think, in the psyche of music. And the tune was actually written for Tony McMahon, the great accordion player. And I love Tony is like guru to me, you know, like Peadar. And I actually often think about Tony with his accordion. You know that Hanuman, there's an Indian Hindu god Hanuman, and he's often depicted pulling open his chest to reveal the deities inside his heart. And I often imagine Tony McMahon with his accordion. He's a man who just pours his heart and soul into every note he plays. So that tune the second tune is a tune that Peadar wrote for Tony, and the first tune is a tune that I wrote with my daughter Rosie, who was 6 3/4, and we wrote this during the lockdown, looking at some buttercups. So she's one of my greatest teachers too.
Okay.
And I have to add that Tony McMahon actually has a very large connection with India as well, because he spends a lot of time there, and he's very into Indian music. So yeah.
That's a beautiful selection, Buttercup and a Padar O'Ria the tune, played by Matthew Noone and Tommy Hayes. Utsav, as Matthew was introducing that piece, you were nodding your head when he was listing names. Are you familiar with all the icons of Irish music? Have you made yourself familiar?
I don't know if I'm familiar with all of the icons, but I know that there's a whole bunch of shining beacons that have stood out for me. Like Padar is huge. Like, I feel like one of the first times I was inspired to try anything between Indian music and Irish music was listening to the recording that Martin and Queen did in his living room on the True Records, where they have a tanpara going in the back. Yeah. And the way that he sings on that recording and everyone's so fluid, it was like, oh, the ornamentation isn't actually that different. And that led me to like this documentary. I don't know if you guys have seen it, called The Atlantean Irish by Bob Quinn,
Yeah.
where apparently a lot of the theories have been like disproved wholeheartedly, but it's still like really good food for thought. But I really love old fiddle players. Like I was really obsessed with Tommy Potts for ages. I love, oh yeah, and the pipe players like Seamus Ennis and Willie Clancy were huge, huge like inspirations. And I've found myself like kind of drawn to them initially, and then going towards some of the more contemporary modern stuff. And then over the last year and a half, I've been going like in absolutely everything, even with Indian music. Like anything before the 70s is amazing, and really basking in the recording quality, all the little quirks and stuff before all the edges get ironed out.
And you're recording collaborators now in reference to the Irish connection. You're currently working with Winford Horan.
Yeah. She taught Irish ensemble at the New England Conservatory, where I went for a master's. And I was like, oh yeah, I have to do Irish ensemble. This will be great. And Win is just one of the most amazing fiddle players and one of the loveliest people. And we kind of played a little bit of ensemble, and then she ended up booking me for some gigs where there was a soloist gig, and she was like, oh, would you come on and play a tune with us? And we did that, and then started doing like other shows, and ended up making a record very slowly over the course of a year and a half. It's like, let's just go into a studio for a few hours, and then kind of working towards it more. The momentum kept picking up, and we ended up doing a couple of tours. So
that was a beautiful album. That's The Memory of Magic, is it?
Yeah.
Very beautiful. You have to come to UL, to the Irish World Academy, and do a PhD.
Yeah, and we could play together. It sounds like a really good idea.
Yeah, that'd be great. When are you coming back to Ireland, Utsav? Well, geez, when's anyone flying, huh?
Yeah, I was supposed to be there around here actually with Win for something, but let's see as soon as I can.
Okay, good.
We're going to close our proceedings with improvisation, actually. Technically, this performance has been achieved transatlantic. I'm sure this piece would perhaps be different if you were in the same room, having listened to your thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah, and being together. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's if it was an ideal situation, but it's not. So today, technically, we're transatlantic. Tommy and Matthew are on this side, and Utsav is in New York. So let's hear the fruits of this Zoom tune, which is suitably titled New York. Anybody want to say anything about it before we play it?
Yeah, it's actually called That New York Thang. It's a full title. This tune fell under my fingers, as John Carter used to say. I wouldn't say I wrote it, but I was actually the first time I ever went to New York. I was staying in a friend's apartment, and I was just a bit overwhelmed by the big city noises and the NYPD going past, and I just stayed in the room for like a whole day playing my sarod, and this tune came out of that session, so that's why it's named such.
And what's happening tonight is the marriage between what you and Tommy did and what Utsav will now.
Yeah. So Tommy and I. So what we've done, Tommy and I recorded a version in Clare, and in my mind I imagined Utsav playing and tried to leave some spaces for him to do something. So we tried to make a
space in between.
Spaces in between, and that's Utsav is the space in between.
Yeah, it's a beautiful tune. It was so much fun to play over.
a transatlantic collaboration between our guest trio tonight for this Culture Night event, made possible by the support of Clare Arts Office and the Arts Council of Ireland. Video editing and production was by Fergal Scal. I'm Carl Corcoran, and my sincere thanks for the invitation to moderate this discussion. And our final thanks do go to the trio, the transatlantic trio, Tommy Hayes, Matthew Noone, and from New York, Utsav Lal. Gentlemen, thank you for being here, and good night.